أن محمدا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله.
ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا وسيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلله فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن سيدنا محمدا عبده ورسوله خير نبي اجتباه وهدى ورحمة للعالمين أرسله بالهدى ودين الحق ليظهره على الدين كله ولو كره الكافرون. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد كما صليت على سيدنا إبراهيم وعلى آل سيدنا إبراهيم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد كما باركت على سيدنا إبراهيم وعلى آل سيدنا إبراهيم في العالمين إنك حميد مجيد. عباد الله، أوصيكم ونفسي بتقوى الله، فقد قال عز وجل: يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما. Indeed, all praise is due to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We ask for His guidance and we seek His help and we seek refuge with Allah from the evils within ourselves, for indeed whoever Allah guides none can misguide, and whoever Allah allows to go astray none can guide. And I bear witness that there is none worthy of worship except Allah, and that Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is His final messenger. I give you advice unto myself to have consciousness of Allah in secret and in public. Imam Ali was once praying at night and his beard filled with tears as he said, Ya dunya ghurri ghayri. Ya dunya ghurri ghayri. O world, fool someone else. A'ilayya ta'arradti. Do you show yourself to me? Am ilayya tashawwafti. Or do you show yourself to me? قَدْ طَلَّقْتُكِ ثَلَاثًا. He said to the dunya, to the world, I have divorced you 3 times. لَا رَجْعَةَ فِيهَا. There will be no return to the dunya to me. فَعُمْرُكِ قَصِيرٌ. Your length is very short. فَخَطَرُكِ حَقِيرٌ. But your danger is nasty. مِنْ قِلَّةِ الزَّادِ وَوَحْشَةِ الطَّرِيقِ وَبُعْدِ السَّفَرِ. And he concluded by saying, oh, how little provision we have, and how difficult the path is, and how far away is the distance in travel. As we have come out of Ramadan, we reface the world. We reface ourselves and the many challenges. We have a beautiful month where we are shown what we could achieve, but then the real world hits us back in the face. And as we come out of Ramadan and we re-energize ourselves for another year, we have to ask ourselves the question, what do we really want? How can we not return to the very vices that we had before Ramadan? How can we make sure that we don't improve in any shape, way or form, having gone through this intense spiritual month, a month of blessing, a month that even the non-Muslims in previous nations look at us and they say, how do you do it? And even we ourselves question how we could have done it. How could we go all night praying Taraweeh while now we struggle to do our Fard Salah? How could we fast until 8:30 in the evening when now we can't even resist the chocolate? Brothers and sisters, we have to make a renewed effort. If Imam Ali If Imam Ali is complaining, what about us? What about me? What about you? This is the essence of our life. This is the essence of our existence, to make that struggle. And that is why the peak, the pinnacle of our religion is jihad. Is to struggle. In all the different ways that that meaning of the word entails, is to really struggle. And that's where the warrior is respected, because he can fight the enemy. But we have to be warriors ourselves, even if there's no enemy to be fought. Not when another temptation comes past, we fall, we buckle, and we fall back in. No, we have to have some fortitude, we have to have some strength. We have to make a step change. Otherwise, what are we doing? Why are we chasing the dunya when it's so superficial? And Allah addresses this in the Quran in Surah Al-Isra. Allah says, من كان يريد العاجلة عجلنا له فيها ما نشاء لمن نريد. But whoever wants the desires and temptations, then we will give it to them, to whoever we intend. ثم جعلنا له جهنم يصلاها مذموما مدحورا. Then we will make their end in hellfire, and they will burn censured and banished. ومن أراد الآخرة وسعى لها سعيها وهو مؤمن فأولئك كان سعيهم مشكورا. And whoever wants the hereafter, and what? And strives for it, and struggles for it, and they're a believer, it is for those efforts that Allah appreciates. Allah appreciates those efforts. What's the word used? Mashkura. You use this. If you say thank you to someone in Arabic, you say shukran. Allah appreciates your effort, your struggle. كُلًّا نُمِدُّ هَؤُلَاء وَهَؤُلَاء مِنْ عَطَاءِ رَبِّكَ وَمَا كَانَ عَطَاءُ رَبِّكَ مَحْظُورًا. To each we will extend. For those people who strive for the dunya, who strive for these hedonistic pleasures, they will have some extension, they will get the results. And so we extend to those and those from the gift from your Lord, and never has the gift of your Lord been restricted. So it's that decision time that we've come out of Ramadan. What change can we make? What sin that we always struggled with, we will say, this year, that's enough, no more. I am a mujahid. I am a warrior. And I will continue to resist. That's it. I won't fall back into that trap again. I won't make excuses for myself. Brothers, I'm talking to myself. We all struggle with this. But we have no choice. We have no choice. Imam al-Qayyim has a beautiful saying. He says, Ya da'if al-azm, O weak person, inna al-tariq, this religion of Islam, shaqa fihi Nuh, wa dhubiha fihi Yahya, ونشر فيه زكريا بالمناشير وألقي في النار إبراهيم وعذب فيه محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وأنت تريد الإسلام السهل الذي يأتيك إلى قدمك. He says, look what happened to all the prophets. Zakaria alayhi salam was sawn in half. Nuh alayhi salam struggled. Yahya was murdered. Ibrahim alayhi salam was thrown into the fire. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was tortured or had lots of difficulties, and his companions were tortured. And you want the easy Islam? Ya da'if al-azm, why are you so weak? Stand up. Be strong. Make a difference. And in this struggle, the way to look at it is to recognize everybody here has something called the nafs. Your nafs. You can translate it as like your ego or your inner desires. And even now, I was watching an interview of a psychiatrist the other day, and what they actually suggest, this is a modern thing, is that you give they call it like your thoughts, your inner thoughts. You give it a name. So your name is Ahmad, you call it Steve or something like that. Barry, yeah? So when it suggests a thought, because he was saying that people come to him and say, Doctor, I've got this evil thought. Like, I don't even repeat it in the khutbah. Evil thoughts, things you would go to prison for and get a long sentence. And he says to them, that's just your thoughts. That's not you. So he would teach them this practice, call it, give it a name, and talk to it. And say, you're not gonna convince me to do that again. I'm not gonna fall into your trap. This is your nafs. And that's why the Quran has three main stages of how you can develop and discipline that nafs. And they actually call it jihadun nafs, the struggle of disciplining yourself. If you can do that, you can achieve anything. If you can contain, control over your nafs. In fact, when Malcolm Gladwell wrote the book Outliers, he gives it a name called executive function. That's that famous study with the marshmallow and the children who said no to the marshmallow and get two afterwards. They're able to control what they want to do. The prefrontal cortex, you say, no, I'm in charge. I'm not going to go with my emotional desires. And those children, as they tracked them over the years, they were more financially successful, physically they were healthier, had healthier relationships. In our religion, we have this concept of the nafs. The nafs. So the Quran mentions the nafs in different ways. In Surah Yusuf, there's this idea of al-ammara bis-su', the nafs that commands you to do evil. If you've ever done a sin that you're ashamed of, the kind of sin that you would hope nobody in this place knew that you did, it's probably the nafs al-ammara that really pushed you to do it. Allah says in the Quran, وَمَا أُبَرِّئُ نَفْسِي إِنَّ النَّفْسَ لَأَمَّارَةٌ بِالسُّوءِ إِلَّا مَنْ رَحِمَ رَبِّي. Yeah? إِنَّ رَبِّ غَفُورٌ رَحِيمٌ. He says, I do not acquit myself. Indeed, the soul is a persistent enjoyer of evil. Except those who my Lord has mercy, my Lord is forgiving and merciful. If you can come to terms with that you're not bad, you're not evil, but there's that part of your soul, that your nafs that you succumb to, that you allowed to give you that bad idea, and in a moment of weakness you fulfilled and acted upon it. That is the ammara bis-su'. Separate it from yourself and learn to control it. And take pride in being able to control it. This is a very important practice that we start to develop, that we adopt. That we say today in the khutbah, right, I'm going to try and do this. Because we've come out of Ramadan and everyone's better than they were before they went into Ramadan. Oh, but I'm a really bad person. No one here is worse after Ramadan. It's only been a week. Yeah? Oh, but I committed that in this week since Ramadan, I committed a sin. But it's still just one sin. Or a few, only a week's worth of sinning. You can go back. You can go back. But if you let this ammara bis-su' go out of control, you'll be looking next Ramadan thinking, another year of my life. God, what brothers and sisters, we only have a few years of life. We only have a few Ramadans. We don't know if we're going to live to the next Ramadan. So we have to not allow this ammara bis-su'. Right, okay, I've taken control of my ammara bis-su'. Then you have the next level, which is called an-nafsul lawwama. An-nafsul lawwama. Allah says in the Quran, لا أقسم بيوم القيامة ولا أقسم بالنفس اللوامة أيحسب الإنسان أن يترك ولا أقسم بالنفس اللوامة أيحسب الإنسان أن لن نجمع عظاما. When you write it down on the phone and it doesn't make sense. Yeah? So I'll put a subsequent ayah that I wanted to mention. أَيَحْسَبُ الْإِنسَانُ أَن يُتْرَكَ سُدًى. Yeah? As well. So Allah's talking about this lawama, the reproaching self. Here is where you're in between the two. You do something bad, you regret it, and you do good. You come to Salatul Jum'ah. That's good. But then another day you might do something bad. And then you're in between these two states. Constantly in between these two states. The nafs al-lawama is not 100% there yet. Yeah? And then Allah, that's why in the subsequent ayah, Allah says, does man think that they'll be neglected? No, you're going to be constantly facing tests. That's the whole point of life. And the Prophet ﷺ told us that the people who get the hardest tests are the prophets. So it's not about how good we are. That's just the nature of life. Life is a test. And then they said after the friends of Allah, the scholars, these are the people hardest tested. Yeah? In fact, you find many companions, at the end of their life, they went blind. Some of the scholars said that was their final test, just to wipe away any small sins that might have had. The final stage of the nafs is what's called an-nafs al-mutma'inna. It's in Surah Al-Fajr. Ya ayyatuha an-nafs al-mutma'inna. Irji'i ila rabbiki radiyatan mardiya. And for the aside Arabic point here, a really good example of what we mean by the ism fa'il and ism maf'ul. the active participle and the passive participle. So in Arabic, when you have a person doing a verb, like in English you would say the eater or the eaten. Ism fa'il, ism maf'ul. And a really good example from the Quran is ادخلي إلى ارجعي إلى ربك راضية. So you're happy, مرضية, and Allah is happy with you. Why? خلاص, you've got that itma'nan. You're peaceful, you're tranquil. Yeah? And this is something that we really should strive to want to have that itma'nan. Instead of having that constant struggle, that constant difficulty, yeah? That we feel at peace. Alhamdulillah, we're pleased, we're happy. And that's it. That's it. But it's hard. And that's why Allah says in the Quran, وَنَفْسٍ وَمَا سَوَّاهَا فَأَلْهَمَهَا فُجُورَهَا وَتَقْوَاهَا قَدْ أَفْلَحَ مَنْ زَكَّاهَا. About the nafs. فَأَلْهَمَهَا, you have fujur, evilness, and piety. And what does Allah say? The one who purifies it is successful. قَدْ أَفْلَحَ مَنْ زَكَّاهَا وَقَدْ خَابَ مَنْ دَسَّاهَا. And you've been unsuccessful, the one who stands on it, who ruins himself. And that's why Allah, as a result of this, the reward for this, Allah says in the Quran, فَلَا تَعْلَمُ نَفْسٌ مَا أُخْفِيَ لَهُم مِّن قُرَّةِ أَعْيُنٍ جَزَاءً بِمَا كَانُوا يَعْمَلُونَ. In Surah Al-Sajdah, Allah says, the one who really achieves this, they have no idea of how much reward you will get for that struggle. For that struggle. We've all struggled through something. Probably the most relatable thing is when you got that exam result that you were trying to get. And you struggled. And you felt, you know what, I did it. Especially if you failed a couple of times before. Yeah? You fail, you resit it, and then you get the result, or you get into that university, whatever it was, you feel that success, and you feel, just think of that emotion, you feel that itma'nan, I did it. Alhamdulillah. I really managed to struggle. Ramadan was a flavor for what you can achieve. But this is a constant struggle. I just want to conclude on a couple of tips, inshallah, to help us with this, yeah? The first and easy thing to do is you really need to guard who you are listening to. So the easiest thing is your friends. Start going to some kind of study circle. It doesn't matter where it is, who it is. Just for you might sit there and let shaitan say to you, well, this person's not that knowledgeable. There's a better scholar here, there's a better teacher there. It's not about that. In the first stage, it's just being with someone better than you. My teacher, my many teachers, often when I go with them and sit with them, it's just to be with someone better than me, someone who's studied more than me, and just it feels peaceful. Yeah, it will rub off onto you. With social media now, we're being exposed to lots of different ideas, and they've really made it addictive, because there was a study where they had these alcoholics, and they wanted them to carry on doing breathalyzer tests to show that they're not drunk. When they offered them a prize if they did the breathalyzer test, so you come in, you do the breathalyzer test, and if you're not drunk, you get a prize. 85% of the people came to these tests. When it was just a voluntary come in, 22% of people came in. So that's why, because there's like this element of surprise. So what's happened with all these, with TikTok and YouTube Shorts and Instagram, it's become very addictive. And then we hear all sorts of things. Often things we never intended to hear, and it goes into our brain, has an effect on us. So we need to guard that. We need to be precious of that. We need to select who we listen to, so it doesn't take us off the path. Allah says in the Quran to the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, وَاصْبِرْ نَفْسَكَ مَعَ الَّذِينَ يَدْعُونَ رَبَّهُمْ بِالْغَدَاةِ وَالْعَشِيِّ يُرِيدُونَ وَجْهَهُ وَلَا تَعْدُ عَيْنَاكَ عَنْهُمْ. Yeah? Stay with the people who remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So there needs to be some kind of gathering. Yeah, at least on a weekly basis, that you go and you sit, and that person's that's better than you, it rubs off onto you. That's very important. You see from Sayyidina Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anhu, and these are the best people, he had a great admiration for a particular companion. And he said, if I, after my khilafah, if he was still alive, I would have made him the khilafah, and I wouldn't have thought twice. His name was Abu Ubaidah ibn al-Jarrah. He was called the Amin of the Ummah. How great Sayyidina Umar was, but he still had somebody who he looked up to. And the companions would regularly say to them, "Ta'annat for Allah sa'a, let's sit down and remember Allah for a bit." And they would encourage you, if the companions are doing this, then what about us? So brothers and sisters, we don't want to get to a stage where we regret this. Allah says in Surah Al-Zumar, أو تقول نفس يا حسرة على ما فرطت في جنب الله وإن كنت لمن الساخرين أو تقول لو أن الله هداني لكنت من المتقين أو تقول حين ترى العذاب لو أن لي كرة فأكون من المحسنين. Don't be in that situation where you realize it after you die. In fact, take this opportunity to improve. And Allah says, وَالَّذِينَ جَاهَدُوا فِينَا لَنَهْدِيَنَّهُمْ سُبُلُنَا. If you really struggle and strive, you will be guided. But there needs to be that struggle. I'll finish with this last story. There was a companion called Rabi'a ibn Ka'b, not a famous companion. And he went to the Prophet ﷺ. He always sit outside his house. He wanted to serve the Prophet, peace be upon him. So one day the Prophet ﷺ said to him, Salni ya Rabi'a, what do you want, ya Rabi'a? He said, Da'ni ufakkir, let me think about it. So he went and thought about it, and he came back, because he went and thought, like, shall I get some dunya, this? He went back to the Prophet ﷺ and he said, I want to be your neighbor in paradise. So what was the Prophet ﷺ said? His response, he said, أعني على نفسك بكثرة السجود. Help your nafs by doing lots of sujood. In other words, you might want this, but you have to control your nafs. How? By doing lots of sujood. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم فاستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. الحمد لله ثم الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستهديه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا وسيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. يا معشر المسلمين والمسلمات أوصيكم ونفسي بتقوى الله. اللهم اغفر للمؤمنين والمؤمنات والمسلمين والمسلمات الأحياء منهم والأموات. اللهم أرنا الحق حقا وارزقنا اتباعه وأرنا الباطل باطلا وارزقنا اجتنابه. اللهم آت نفوسها تقواها وزكها أنت خير من زكاها أنت وليها ومولاها فنعم المولى ونعم النصير. عباد الله رحمكم الله إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون. اذكروا الله العظيم يذكركم واشكروه على نعمه يزدكم ولذكر الله أولى وأعظم وأجل وأكبر والله يعلم ما تصنعون. وأقم الصلاة.
الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله.